The Trump administration released a rule on Friday that would roll back Obama-era protections for transgender patients under the Affordable Care Act, potentially cutting health care access during the coronavirus pandemic. According to the Wall Street Journal, the rule would affect protections for about 1.4 million transgender adults and about 150,000 transgender teenagers in the U.S. and could lead to transgender individuals and others in the LGBTQ plus community being denied health care services. Trump administration officials say that the policy is being changed to more closely adhere to the ACA text, which does not explicitly name gender identity as a protected category in health care. Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine spoke out against the measure, tweeting in part, quote, "The Trump administration's decision to eliminate protections for transgender patients is simply wrong. I will work to overturn this discriminatory policy." Joining us now, managing editor of NBC Out, Brooke Sapelsa, and actress and LGBTQ plus advocate Laverne Cox. Jonathan Lemire and Reverend Al Sharpton are with us as well. Laverne Cox, I'll start with you. Your reaction to the move by the administration.
Good morning, Mika. What I think people should know, first of all, is that this rule on Friday comes when we're expecting a Supreme Court decision, basically ruling as to whether or not existing federal law indeed covers the transgender community when it comes to discrimination on the basis of sex. That decision from the Supreme Court could come as early as this morning or within the next few weeks. So the announcement that happened on Friday was really unnecessary because the Supreme Court will be ruling on this very soon. Obviously, during Pride Month, when there's a national uprising against racial oppression in this country, when there's a national pandemic, this administration is basically adding insult to injury because last week 2 transgender women were found murdered. Tony McDade, a black trans man in Tallahassee, Florida, 2 days after George Floyd was murdered, was killed by police in Tallahassee. So that announcement on Friday was completely unnecessary. The Supreme Court will be making a decision on this very soon. And if the Supreme Court says that it is legal to discriminate against transgender people in federal law, then it is incumbent upon each of us as citizens to make sure that we flip the Senate and flip the presidency, because the Equality Act, which was passed by Congress last year, does indeed explicitly protect the LGBTQI plus community from discrimination.
I can't imagine, Brooke Sapelsa, what the motivation behind this would be, except to try and cut health care access to more Americans.
And I think the important thing to note is that this measure on Friday, which rolled back protections that the Obama administration had given to transgender patients under the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, is part of a years-long trend in the Trump administration, either rolling back or attempting to roll back recently gained rights, particularly by transgender people. So we've seen this in education, we've seen this in the military, and we've seen this in employment. The Title VII LGBTQ workplace cases that Laverne recently mentioned that are going to be decided by the Supreme Court any day now, as early as today. The Trump administration submitted briefs in those cases basically saying transgender employees and gay employees are not protected under civil rights non-discrimination protections. So it's part of a broader trend. And I've heard a number of people express sentiment, as Laverne did, that the timing of this could not have been worse. It's Pride Month, and the rule came out on the 4th anniversary of the Pulse shooting.
Jonathan Lemire has a question. Jonathan, jump in.
Laverne, I was just about to note the anniversary of the Pulse shooting as well. We saw over the weekend in New York City, in Brooklyn, a massive demonstration, march, protest in support of trans rights in Brooklyn. And certainly it's under great scrutiny here from the federal government. But what are you seeing on the state level? Are states stepping up in case there is changes on the federal level? And how widely do these protections vary state by state?
That's a really great question. So again, what folks should know that is that with this rule that was announced on Friday, some states explicitly do protect trans folks and do explicitly protect the LGBTQI plus community, but it is a patchwork of protections now. Some localities, some states, there are protections, and in other places, there are not protections. I think this announcement happened on Friday. This administration and what historically power does is try to divide and conquer people, try to demoralize people. And what was so beautiful about the demonstrations that happened in Brooklyn yesterday, in Los Angeles, and all over the country is that the protest for Black trans lives was in conjunction with the Black Lives Matter protest. There is an acknowledgement now more than ever that Black folks are also transgender, are also LGBTQI, that our lives matter. And it is so crucial now that we do not succumb to the divide and conquer strategies of this administration and others, that we come together and understand that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So in every state, every state is different in terms of the levels of protection. And so it's so important that on a federal level, we have explicit protections. Hopefully the Supreme Court will do that. And if the Supreme Court does not do that, then we need to make sure that Congress does.
Reverend Al.
Laverne, I want to pick off where you just talked about the march and rally yesterday in Brooklyn, my hometown, and then the combination of Black Lives Matter and the trans march and rally in L.A., because I think part of what has been, frankly, hypocritical of civil rights activists is not standing up for trans rights and not saying, wait a minute, the Black community includes the trans community and vice versa. And we should be just as offended when they desecrate Pride Month as they do anything like Juneteenth, when we feel that the president shouldn't speak there. Speak to the challenge of trying to bring the fact that violating anyone's civil rights is violating everyone's civil rights, and you're not asking anyone to accept you. You accept yourself. Just don't violate your self-acceptance and self-affirmation.
Absolutely. I think trans folks exist at the intersection of every big issue that's going on right now. Also, it's more to note that in Rule 1557, anyone seeking abortion access is also allowed to be discriminated against according to this this provision. Trans people are so beautiful and so amazing, and I think at the same way that we're having a national reckoning right now around race in this country, and I encourage everyone, no matter who you are, no matter what race you are, to be interrogating your implicit biases around race in this country. We should be having the same internal conversations with ourselves and in our communities, with our friends and families about trans folks. We all live in a culture that devalues Black lives. We all live in a culture that devalues the lives of trans people, and we've all internalized those values. I don't care who you are. I've internalized those values. I have to do work every single day as a Black person, as a trans woman, to unlearn, to decolonize my mind. And this is the work that everyone must do so that we can come together in the struggle for justice for everyone.
Brooks Zapelsa, we'll end on you as you cover this. Where is this headed next? What are you looking at?
Well, our coverage this month, our Pride coverage, is very much centered on Black queer folks. So we're very much paying attention to issues that specifically cover the Black queer community. And one thing that I do want to note, mentioning the intersection of trans rights and the Black Lives Matter movement, last year, the Human Rights Campaign, which tracks transgender deaths due to fatal violence, found that of the 28 trans deaths that they tracked, over 90% were Black trans women. So the issues are very much intersectional, and that's what we'll be focused on. Our coverage, we're also planning a town hall at the end of the month, specifically focused on Black queer issues. So on NBC Out, we will be posting coverage of those issues, and we'll have more information about our town hall, which will specifically focus on that. And Pride this year, from the big global, sorry, I thought someone was interjecting. The big global Pride that will be happening on June 27th, as well as Prides in New York and Los Angeles, will be focused on Black solidarity. So that's what we'll be looking ahead to.
All right, NBC Out's Brooks Zapelsa, thank you very much. And Laverne Cox, thank you as well. We want to mention Laverne's latest project, the Netflix original documentary, Disclosure begins streaming this Friday, June 19th, and we look forward to that. Thank you both. Up next, as leaders on Capitol Hill try to figure out a way forward on police reform, changes are already underway in several cities and states. We'll talk about that next on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.